We should have acted. He's already here. The internet's told of his return. With the release of Skyrim, it was only a matter of time before lore videos began to crop up. Nobody could believe a lore series that deals with obscure events in the Elder Scrolls could truly exist. For truth be told, mainstream stuff like races and provinces spreads like wildfire. But there is still one the casuals fear. In their tongue, they call him the TheLoopyAlchemist. And this is his Elder Scrolls lore. The Red Year occurred in 4th Era 5, when the Red Mountain erupted, shaking Morrowind to its core. Before we get started, we should probably go over some specifics on the Red Mountain itself. The original/real name of the Red Mountain is Vandenfell, meaning City of the Strong Shield in Dwemer. The island of Vandenfell is actually named after the volcano. The eruption that occurred in 4th Era 5 is the second major eruption of the Red Mountain that we know of. The first one occurred in 1st Era 668. So much ash got flung up into the sky that actually blocked out the sun for a full year. This event was called Sun's Death, or the Year of Winter and Summer, depending on what source you're reading. Now, this date is really interesting since it's smack dab in the middle of the War of the First Council, between the Chimer, the precursors to the modern Dunmer, and the Dwemer. This war would eventually end with all the Dwemer disappearing in 1st Era 700 at the Battle of the Red Mountain. Did the eruption have anything to do with the war? Was it intentional? If I had to guess, I'd say probably, but I have no idea how. Speaking of the Battle of the Red Mountain, I also need to briefly explain the Tribunal. Now, the Tribunal is extremely complicated, so here's the abridged version. They were a collection of leading Chimer nobles who were the companions of Indral Nerevar, the commander of the Chimer forces, and the guy the Nerevarine is a reincarnation of. After the Dwemer disappeared, they assassinated Indral Nerevar and used the tools of Kagrenac being the Dwemer tonal architect, on the heart of Lorkhan to grant themselves near godlike powers. The Tribunal in time would be worshipped as gods by the Dunmer, excluding the Ashlanders, and went to great efforts to cover up how they got their powers. It should be noted that there are different versions of this story, but this is the one that's probably true. It should also be noted that the Tribunal gained immense political power as well as religious power. The member of the Tribunal we'll be focusing on is the warrior poet Vivek. After gaining his powers, Vivek took up residence in what I presume to be the newly established and creatively named Vivek City. Vivek City soon became the biggest city in all of Vandenfell, but the flourishing new city was very nearly stamped out. One day, Sheogorath flung Bardo, a massive celestial rock, at Vivek City for lulz. Vivek did use his powers to stop Bardo, but he didn't destroy it, and instead kept it floating above the city. In a move that puts every overly attached girlfriend in history to shame, he declared that if the people of Vivek City ever stopped loving him, Bardo would resume falling and kill them all. Another variation of the story has Bardo being called Lie Rock, and it just falling because the rock itself is evil, instead of Sheogorath having to chuck it at them, but either way, Vivek had a massive new rock. He had it hollowed to form the Ministry of Truth, where it served as a temple and high-security prison. Things were all well and good until the fulfillment of the Nerevarine prophecy, with Indral Nerevar's reincarnation, the Nerevarine, returning to Morrowind and defeating Dagoth-Ur, among other things. This, for some reason, caused Vivek to disappear. The exact date of his disappearance is unknown, but we can date it sometime between the defeat of Dagoth-Ur and the start of the Oblivion Crisis. No one is entirely sure of Vivek's fate, but some say he was taken to Oblivion by the Daedra during the Oblivion Crisis, others say he was killed by the Nerevarine, and others even say that he shared the same fate as the Dwemer. Without Vivek, the magic keeping Bardo from falling began to weaken. The Dunmer were not blind to this. Two prominent nobles, Sul and Vuhan, made a deal with Clevicisbile and created an ingenium, a device powered by souls that kept Bardo afloat. Hundreds of souls were required to fuel the Ingenium. When they started running out of souls, live people had to be used. Only live people with really strong souls could be sacrificed, one of whom was Ilseven, Suul's lover. Suul did not take it well when he heard Vulhan had sacrificed Ilseven. He destroyed the Ingenium trying to rescue her. This, did not work out so well. Not only does Ilseven end up dying anyways, but Bardo resumed falling at the same speed before Vivec stopped it. The impact was catastrophic. Vivec City was obliterated. There is now a crater called Scathing Bay where the city used to be. The impact also caused the Red Mountain to erupt, making the destruction of Vivec City almost an afterthought. We have multiple first-hand accounts on just what happened next from the book The Red Year by Millis Ravel. Here are a couple extracts. The ground. It just turned into mush. There was almost no warning. I mean, we were what? Perhaps a mile from the nearest swamps? It was like the swamp suddenly swallowed up half of the city. Another eyewitness states, "It was such a terrible thing. The fire. It burned everything in its path. It flattened trees, turned our huts into splinters, and knocked over towers like they were made from parchment. It all happened in an instant. The rumbling sound, then a massive wall of flame. It was so high, it blocked out the sun. I thought that the world itself had split apart. It passed over the water and turned it to steam, vaporized everything it touched. When it finally hit us, I was blown off my feet. Didn't even have time to run away or seek shelter. I ended up in the riverbed next to town, which kept some of the flames off of me. All around, I could smell the charred stench of death. There were Dunmer that were burned alive, and some never even saw it coming. I lay in that riverbed for 2 days before the healers found me. When I could finally stand, Nisus was gone. There wasn't a thing left. It's as though it was wiped from the face of Tamriel." Every city and almost the entire population of Vandenfell was completely wiped out. Aldrune, Balmera, Nisus, and Sadrith Mora all gone. But the destruction was not limited to Vandenfell. Fort Frostmoth, in southeastern Solstheim, was damaged almost beyond recognition. The blast even affected the island's environment. Now much of it resembles how Vandenfell once looked. Much of mainland Morrowind fared no better. Multiple cities, most notably Tyr, were hit with earthquakes and severe flooding. Even roads as far south as Blackmarsh were destroyed. But not all was lost. Mournhold had survived the blast almost completely undamaged. It became the center of probably the biggest relief effort in Tamriel's history. Operations were spearheaded by Host Redoran, which would become the dominant political power in Morrowind thanks to their actions in the wake of the eruption. Despite the Herculean effort, Host Redoran did not resolve the crisis alone. Many Dunmer came back from other provinces to help with the work. Their efforts were mostly successful, and multiple settlements, including Balmora, were rebuilt. Rebuilding their homeland wasn't the only thing the Dunmer had to worry about. The Argonians, under the leadership of the Anzalil, took advantage of Morrowind's weakened state and invaded as revenge for thousands of years of enslavement. The official pretext they used was that they were taking back the southern portions of Morrowind that had traditionally been part of Blackmarsh. They sacked many cities, including Mournhold. The Argonian advance was eventually halted by a Redoran army. They withdrew, and the Dunmer were left in peace to resume trying to rebuild their country. The enormous effect the Red Year had on Morrowind is impossible to overstate. The Empire's lack of protection and indifference to the Dunmer, both from first the eruption and the Argonian invasion, caused a massive divide. Yes, Morrowind did officially secede from the Empire following the Red Year. Host Lahu's close ties to the Empire made it get replaced by Host Sandris on the Council of Great Houses. Host Redoran emerged as the dominant political force in Morrowind. Morrowind's capital was moved to Rootspire in the Redoran city of Blacklight. Mournhold was eventually rebuilt. We don't know if or how much of Morrowind now belongs to the Argonians, but I'd draw the worst-case scenario of everything south of Mournhold belonging to them, except for the major cities of Tyr and Narcissus. Dunmer refugees poured out of Morrowind, mostly going to Windhelm in Skyrim and Ravenrock in Solstheim. Solstheim would eventually be given to Morrowind in 4th Era 16 by the High King of Skyrim as a gift to the Dunmer people. Much of Morrowind is now practically uninhabitable. Despite some successes like the rebuilding of Balmora, Vandenfell is largely vacant. Even the hardy Siltstriders have almost gone completely extinct. Though unproven, the Red Year is held by some as the cause of the great collapse of Winterhold in 4th Era 122. But the massive time gap between the eruption and the collapse have made more than a few skeptical. Perhaps the biggest effect of the Red Year was the abandonment of the Tribunal. They are no longer worshipped as gods, but are still venerated as saints, easing the transition period between the worship of the Tribunal and the worship of their traditional Daedric pantheon. Morrowind's future remains uncertain at best, but if the settlement at Raven Rock shows anything, their spirit remains undefeated, and hoping for a better future is something the people of Morrowind are no strangers to. When earth is sundered, and skies choked black, and sleepers serve the 7 curses, to the hearth there comes a stranger, journeyed far beneath moon and star. Though stark-born, to sire uncertain, his aspect marks his certain fate. Wicked stalk him, righteous curse him, prophets speak, but all deny. Many trials make manifest the stranger's fate, the curse's bane. Many touchstones try the stranger, many fall, but one remains.